My name is Jan Broberg, and in case some of you have seen the documentary on Netflix, Abducted in Plain Sight, that's my story, and part of the reason why I'm probably here. So, those that don't know my story, I'm going to give you a tiny brief overview. I was 9 years old. I'm the one with the wig and the ukulele. My sister, Karen, was 7, and my sister, Susan, 5, when a brand new family moved into our neighborhood. We were so excited. They had 5 kids, and the 3 oldest boys matched us in age, so we had an instant friend. We did hundreds of activities with this family. Their father owned the new furniture store in town, and he was a leader in the community and in our congregation. He was also like a second father to me. And 3 years later, he picked me up from a piano lesson, drugged me, kidnapped me, strapped me to the bed of a motorhome, and sexually assaulted me repeatedly. I was 12, 70 pounds, and years from puberty. He was 40, a master manipulator who had groomed my entire family and our congregation and community to love and trust him. When I was found 6 weeks later in Mexico, I told no one of the abuse, no one of the mind control. And 2 years later, at age 14, and still years from puberty, he kidnapped me a second time. This time I was missing for 4 months. The abuse continued. This man spent less than 2 weeks in jail and 3 months in a mental institution, and then went on to rape and sexually assault 7 other little girls that I now know. So many people ask me, how did you survive? Well, my family not only survived, but they were willing to share this story with the world, and every mistake that we made, every sign that we missed, because it's never a scary stranger, or rarely. It's always someone you know, love, and probably trust. And we wanted to open people's eyes, to put their antennas up, so that we could make a difference in the world to end the epidemic of child sexual abuse. But tonight, what I want to talk to you about is to shed a little light of hope, because I believe that everyone can reclaim their happy childhood at any age. So whether you're 40 or 80 or 50-something like me, I believe that we can become, again, like children who are trusting, loving, kind, resilient, and forgiving. And I asked myself 3 important questions to get to that part the rest of my life. The first question I asked myself was, who do I want to be in the room? In a room like this, who do I want to be? Or on a more micro scale, out to lunch with some friends, where we were all complaining about our husbands and our kids and our jobs and our bosses and our sagging faces and our stretch marks and whatever we were complaining about. And I remember getting home, it was in my early 40s, and I'd done a lot of work on myself. I felt like I had come somewhere in my healing process. And I thought, you know what? This is not who I want to be in the room. And I remembered this quote by Mother Teresa, and I had spent an entire day with her in India in my mid-20s when I was in a performing group. And it said this, if you judge people, you have no time to love them. And I thought, okay, that's right. Whether it's judging yourself, it's judging another human being, or complaining, that was not who I wanted to be in the room. I wanted to be the most loving, the most grateful, the least judgmental. And so I had heard about doing something that I thought, according to others, could change my life, so maybe I'd give it a try. And so I bought a little steno notebook, and I started writing down every day one thing I was grateful for. And I committed that I would do that every day for a year. And about 10 months into that process, I got a phone call. And on the other end was news that my 18-year-old stepdaughter, who loved dancing, and she loved flowers, and she loved sunflowers, which were my favorite, and people, I called her my butterfly, had been in a terrible car accident. And she'd been life-flighted to a hospital about 4 hours away. So I quickly took her father to the airport, and then I went to gather all the other kids and get in the car to get up there. One of my stepdaughters was not at home, and she was at a house that was off of a dirt road. And it had been raining that day. And so I was so worried we were going to get stuck in the mud, but we hit a patch of gravel, and I made it to the door, and we all got in the car, and away we went. We were about 2 hours into the journey when my phone rang again. Turn around, go home. Our butterfly has died. I pulled off at the rest stop. I told the kids. Of course, there was lots of mixed feelings, disbelief, anger, holding and hugging. When I got everybody home and settled, I went into my bedroom and alone laid on my bed. And there it was on the nightstand, that notebook. I was like, no way, I don't have anything to say to you today. I can't think of one thing. And then I remembered. And I opened the notebook and I wrote, today, I am grateful for gravel. And sometimes that is as good as it gets. But the practice of looking for something to be grateful for every day changed my life. I sang at her funeral, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a life? And I knew who I wanted to be in the room. The next question I asked myself was, who do I want to be in the world? So in 3rd grade, I had a voice. And after doing this workshop at age 30, I realized I'd lost my voice. There was a girl that was trying to get up the stairs, a 1st grader, and these 6th grade boys at the top of the stairs were throwing little stones and rocks at her. And I came unglued in my 50 pounds of fury, screaming and crying, and I found the principal. And I got him to stop. At age 30, I realized after this workshop I'd taken, I didn't have my voice yet. I was still afraid. So I decided that I would write my epitaph. That who I wanted to be in the world would, how I was remembered, really land for people. And I knew when I made my grand exit and the sun set that this is how I wanted to be remembered. Jan was happy and hopeful. She always imparted a genuine smile and unconditional love. Once I knew what it was, I started to work backwards in my life. What did I have to do to be that person, to be remembered that way? I knew that I wanted to leave behind happy people and happy childhoods. This is my son Austin and my nephew RJ. And to me, that epitomizes who I wanted to be and who I wanted to leave behind. I knew I was meant to be an advocate. I knew that the scream of a sexually abused child was silence, and I had lived to help end that silence. That's who I wanted to be in the world, to stand up for those that were too little or too afraid, the 2 billion children in the world. The final question that I asked myself many times through my life is, am I willing to let go? I believe that most people will experience some sort of trauma in their life, something that literally takes you to the edge, whether it's abuse or it's a death, or maybe it is an act of war or something like a terrible illness, but you will get to the point in your life where you feel like, I can't handle this. So there will be something that will push you to that edge in your life. It might be something that happened in traffic today and you lost your mind. And then you're like, is this how I want to live the rest of my day or the next hour? Can I let it go? So what happened for me was I felt as if I had been wearing like this really heavy coat. And that was the coat of trauma and suffering and pain. And it was keeping me safe on some level. But one day I realized it was in the way of my life, and I needed to take off that coat somehow and hang it up on a virtual coat rack, which I did. from time to time, and I could look at it, I could learn from it, I might be able to actually help somebody else. But I didn't have to live with it in my life all the time. So as I practiced doing that, I practiced going from what I call the 10%, which is the terrible experience in your life, into the 90%, which is the rest of your life. And for me to live in the 90%, I had to work on my emotional health. I had to find a new therapist. I had to find a new good book. I had to do some service for somebody. I had to make decisions and choices. Viktor Frankl said, "Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, who he will become in the next moment." I knew I wanted to live in the 90%, so I practiced. I got healthy. I shared my story, and now I've been able to share it in bigger ways and to empower many others to share theirs. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, said there are only 3 things you need: objective judgment, now, at this very moment. For me, that objective judgment was, who do I want to be in the room? Unselfish action, now, at this very moment. For me, that was, who do I want to be in the world? And lastly, willing acceptance, now, in this very moment, of all external events. For me, that was forgiveness, the gateway to accessing my life in the 90%. I encourage all of you to write your epitaph, to figure out what your life's mantra is. Mine is this: Jan Broberg will act up, she will speak out loud, she will sing her own unique song, and she will dance free from the past into the present and future that she creates. The silence ends with me. Thank you so much. Thank you.